Welcome, Mindsetters. It is a Wednesday. I'm here again, Looney, and we're chilling with Cheryl today. How are you doing, Cheryl?
Oh, well in you, Looney.
I'm great, thanks. Grade 10s. We're doing... What are we doing, Cheryl?
We are doing bones and joints today.
Bones and joints. Life sciences students, I hope you guys are excited just as I am. Got some great stuff in studio today, but that's a little secret that I have because you guys can't see what I see. So Cheryl's going to be taking you guys through the whole lesson. Don't forget to hit us up on Twitter. Our handle is @LearnExtra. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. Remember, you can download all the show notes, the videos, the schedules, DVDs if you want to order DVDs or books and all of that. Get information on our page. It is learnextra.co.za/live. We do have some more exciting stuff happening throughout the whole show, so do stay tuned, guys, and don't go anywhere because we've got great stuff coming up. So Cheryl, let's take it away.
Thank you, Looney. Welcome, everybody. Tonight we're going to be looking at you're busy with the skeleton, so I'm sure you have covered all the different kinds of bones, the different names of all the bones, and now we're actually going to look at the structure of those bones today. We're going to start off, as you can see, of what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the structure of a long bone. I have an example here, and we're going to show you all the different characteristics. And one of the things about the skeleton that we're going to look at is that bones need to join together, and those are called joints. So we're going to look at the different kinds of joints that you can find within your skeleton. And we also know that the skeleton not only is responsible for protection, but it's also responsible for movement. So the bones themselves can't move, but the muscles definitely can. And we're going to have a look how the bones and the muscles fit together to bring about the movement in the body. Then the last thing that we're going to look at is sometimes, unfortunately, certain irregularities can occur within the skeletal system. We're going to look at diseases of the skeletal system and sometimes, very often, common injuries that can occur in the skeletal system. So let us start looking at a picture now that you should find very, very familiar. Okay? When we look at bone, we have done the mammalian tissue bit quite a bit at the beginning of the year. So you should be very familiar with this diagram. Remember, bone tissue. Remember that bone is living. It's not dead. Some of us think because it doesn't really do much that we don't think that it is dead. It's not. It's living tissue. And if you can remember what it consisted of, can you see these rings over there? That is called the Haversian system. Each ring, all right, is a little system by itself. And in that, let me use the pen quickly. All right, what we're going to find, so if I were to draw that one Haversian system, that's another, and you put them all together and you're going to get bone. Now remember, bone, as I said to you, is living. So if it's a living tissue, it needs blood, it needs nourishment. And over here we're going to find in the middle we have the Haversian canal. And if once again you can remember, there should be blood vessels there, okay, bringing all the oxygen and the nutrients to the tissue so that they can live. And obviously, what do we need to do? We need to take the wastes away. We're also going to find a nerve cell in there. Those of you who have broken your arms before, your legs, any kind of bone, I'm definitely going to say to you that there was pain. It's definitely not painless. We need to be able to feel. And lastly, all right, part of our lymphatic system, a system that we're going to look at later, which takes excess tissue fluids away. Okay, now remember, if we have a look here, quick little lesson, it's made up of concentric lamellae. Each of those from there to there, all right, that is the lamellae. In between that's all the bone tissue. And remember, bone is hard. So the components, the salts that are in bone, the calcium, the phosphorus, the magnesium, remember, instead of being in a liquidy form or dissolved in, like, for example, in blood, they're going to be solid, almost in crystal form. And that's going to give bone its hardness. Remember its function, protection, all right, support. You can't have something that protects or supports if it's not going to be hard. And it's also full of collagen fibers, which helps it to be a little bit more flexible. So we do want that support, but we do want a little bit of flexibility as well. Then, as I say to you, all right, because it's hard, these white little streaks are very, 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 very predominant here. Those are called canaliculi. And remember, they are little channels. If we need to nourish the bone. If it's hard, we can't get everything through. So we have these little channels, and what they're going to do, all the blood and everything is going to filter through it, so our tissue is nice and healthy. Now remember, bone needs to constantly renew itself, replace itself. If we break it, obviously to heal. And we've got inside there, we've got a little lacuna, if you can remember, little hollows. And inside we have a little bone producing cell, which is our osteocyte. Okay. Oh, dearie me. Okay, I think we just... Okay, sure, there we go. Me and this thing, we are mortal enemies, me and this machine over here. And Looney's having a good chuckle over there. All right, now I'm sure you've looked at the skeleton last week, right, with Ungen here. I'm sure you looked at the bones. I believe he had a nice little skeleton for you, so you could be able to see. Now, when you think about the skeleton, if you're looking at a skeleton in front of you, and we're going to have a look again just now, when you look at the skeleton, the first thing that you need to notice when you're looking at all the bones is they don't all look alike. The bones have got different shapes, and you know what us biologists love to do? We love to put things into different orders. So, when we look at the skeleton, what we can do, right, we classify. We look at their shape, and we fit them into the different categories that we're so fond of using. Okay? And their names are pretty easy to remember. It's very much what a shape looks like, the name, so nothing too difficult to remember. We're going to find our flat bones, which are flat, obviously, okay, and those are going to be, if you have a look there, your ribs, okay, your rib cage, your scapula, which is your shoulder blade. Remember, don't use shoulder blade. We use the biological term scapula, and very much when we look at the bones of the cranium. Not so much our facial, but remember the bones here that protect our brain. So they are flat. Then we have those that we can't really put into any category because they don't fit into any shape. Those are the irregular bones, all right? And those are your vertebra. You can see there, those are your hip bones that are all funny little shapes. So those that don't really fit into a mold, we call them the irregular. Then the last two, right, are the simple ones, the short bones and the long bones. And it's the long bones today that we're actually going to concentrate on. Our short bones, all right, carpals, our carpals, right, are our wrists. And what always, okay, mirrors the wrist, our tarsals, our ankles. Okay, those are short bones. And also what we're going to find, our phalanges. All right, can also be short bones. And what mirrors our phalanges in our hands? Our phalanges in our feet, what we call our toes. So our fingers and toes are also short bones. And then they are the long bones, obviously, because they're much longer. Now I'm going to go across over here because we're actually going to look at the anatomy of a long bone. All right, in front of me over here, you will see, right, I have an animal's long bone, all right? And when we need to go look at the structure of it. Now, you'll see here, I've got funny, this isn't my little Stanley Jr. It's just a little, all right, it's a bit of a mission to carry the big one around. So where do we find long bones? We find long bones in our limbs. So we're going to find it in our arms and in our legs, okay? So it's going to be the humerus, the ulna and the radius in our arms, and in our legs, the femur, the tibia, and the fibula. Now remember, these ones are long because they're also going to be big, because they're the ones that are going to do the most work when it comes to movement. Also, if we look at our legs, they need to be nice and strong because they need to have a supportive function. Remember, your bones are going to support your body. Okay, let's have a look here. I'm going to leave little Stanley Jr. over there. Let's have a look at the structure of the long bone. If we look at it, I'm going to turn it over it. This is a bone that a colleague of mine actually left in the veld, all right? And the ants ate everything up and cleaned it all up, and actually we have a nice now preserved bone. Otherwise, sometimes when you cook it or you heat it, it can destroy it. When you look at the bone, all right, the first thing that should become apparent is that there's a long, straight piece over here, a long piece, and at the end we almost have two heads. Okay, now this long portion over here is called the diaphysis. Okay, diaphysis. That's the long, narrow portion of the bone. It's also the strongest portion, as we'll see just now, because it's the weight-bearing portion. At the top are the two heads of the long bone, and we call those the epiphysis. Okay, so we have a diaphysis and we have an epiphysis. So that's the shaft. Okay, we don't always use the word shaft. It's preferable to use diaphysis, and then the heads, preferably to use again the epiphysis. All right, a little bit difficult to remember, to spell, but don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Now, if we look inside, right, you can see some of the ants are still here. If we have a look at the bone, all right, you will actually see here, if we look inside, there is the epiphysis, all right, on that side, and there is the shaft, the diaphysis. If we look at the different bones, we can actually notice that the structure of the epiphysis and the diaphysis is slightly different. Okay, the epiphysis over here is made up of what we call spongy bone. Now, spongy bone, you can imagine the sponge that you might use in the bath. It's got a lot more holes in it, if I can use whole. If I can be biological, it's more solid. All right, it's not as solid, sorry, should I say. So it's got more spaces in between. That's why we call it spongy bone, right? Because there is a lot more of those spaces. In between those spaces, and you can't see it here because the ants have had a lovely good munchy munch on here, you are going to find something that you call bone marrow. Okay, bone marrow. And in the heads, the epiphysis, you find your red bone marrow. Now, if you can remember back to your mammalian tissue, red bone marrow and your yellow bone marrow are responsible for making your blood cells. Okay, your red blood cells and your white blood cells, your erythrocytes and your leukocytes. So the bone here doesn't have as much of a supportive function. If we have a look now at the diaphysis, you will see, look here, you can see it, you almost see it, looks like a bit like you want to just can poke it. But if you have a look at the diaphysis, you can't see the same shape, and that is because that is made up of compact bone. Compact bone does not have the spaces that we find in the epiphysis. As the word says, compact, very, 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 very close together. And we want that, all right? Because my diaphysis, that's where my load occurs. In other words, that's where I put my, that is where my, where all my weight is going to be. This is where I'm going to attach my muscles, and my muscles over here, if they pull, we don't want it to be able to pull apart, okay? So this part needs to be strong. Now, if we look, you'll see there's nothing inside here but a hollow, okay? That would be the medullary cavity. Okay, so what do we find in here? The bone marrow, and we find inside that it's hollow because that's where the bone marrow is going to sit. Now remember, those of you who, when we did cells, you would have also talked about stem cells. And one of the things is when they harvest, that's what they're trying to get. Those stem cells that are inside the bones that can then make new blood cells. Then if we go outside again, all right, you will see over here, if I pull this over here, the bone is surrounded by a nice, tough, fibrous outer layer, and that is called the periosteum. All right, so we'll say it again, the periosteum. Remember, os, when we use the word os, that always refers to bone, and the periosteum on the outside makes the bone nice and firm. On the inside, all right, you can't see it as much, but it's nice and smooth. The bones inside here is smooth, and that is a layer that's not as tough as the one on the outside, all right? But there we go. If we look inside here, if you feel it, you can't really see it. You need to feel it, all right? It's nice and smooth, and that is called the endosteum. Remember, anything inside is endo. So that is the endosteum. Os, again, meaning bone. Okay, so we got the epiphysis, We got the diaphysis. We've got the medullary cavity with the bone marrow inside. The lining on the inside is called the endosteum. The lining on the outside is called the periosteum. Now, if you have a look at this, at the heads over here, I'm going to show you this one over here. If you have a look, next time, I always tell my kids, next time you have a chicken bone, all right? A chicken bone is such a wonderful thing because nearly all of the mammalian tissues are there and obviously the bone. Next time you have a chicken bone, when you have the chicken bone, I'm sure all of you at the ends of the bone, all right, there's that little white piece, okay, that is nice and smooth. That is called hyaline cartilage. If you can remember back when we did connective tissue, all right, hyaline cartilage is covering the epiphysis. It covers the ends of the long bones. It makes them nice and smooth. If you can see it here, it's nice and smooth. Now, that brings us, all right, to when we start to look just now, we're going to look at joints. Now, if two bones are joined together, all right, that means they are going to move. And when they move, you obviously want the movement to be smooth. You don't want it to be all jerky, and if you've got friction, it's going to hurt. Okay? So over here, you will see at the hyaline cartilage, go and play with your chicken bone next time. All right? Go and have a look at that white. Feel it. You'll see it's nice and smooth. On the other side over here, some of the meat is still attached, so you can't see it as much. There we go. All right? That's going to be your hyaline cartilage. Nice and smooth. The word we use there is also lubrication and for protection. So you don't want, if the bones do somehow slide next to each other, you want the bones to be protected. In this layer over here, you won't be able to see it now, all right, is going to be blood vessels, because the blood vessels need to nourish the bone. Okay, so if we have to look again, epiphysis, diaphysis, the bone marrow inside the medullary cavity, the endosteum inside, the periosteum on the outside, and what we usually find, the word that people sometimes use is you might use the word articular cartilage. Articulate means when two things join, they articulate. So with this bone, and if, all right, is going to join to another bone, as you can see, all right, if you have a look at it, if it joins to another bone, what's going to happen? It articulates. So the cartilage between the two bones would then be articulating cartilage. Okay, now which brings us to the next section. If we have a look at Stanley again over here, all right, you will notice that the bones are joined to each other. So you will have a look here. There's from the olden days, there's a song. I'm sure you know the hip bone's connected to the leg bone. But all the bones are connected. The only bone that isn't connected to another bone is our patella. All right? Over here, if I bring the knee joints across and I turn it over there, as you can see, let me get it around. Okay, there's your patella, your kneecap. It doesn't articulate or join with any of the others. Okay, now, when we're looking at joints, what do we say? A definition of joints is when two bones, right, are joined together. So when we have the connection of two bones together, that is going to form a joint. Now, if you have a look at little Stanley over here, and if you have a look at some of the examples that I've brought, you should notice that some of the joints are able to move a lot more freely than others. So once again, as I said earlier, we like to classify bones into different shapes. We also are now going to classify joints into different, all right, classes. All right, I think we've got a break though. Hey, okay, yeah, whispering in my ear.
Mindset is we are going to take a short break, but remember, Cheryl told you to play with your chicken bones next time. So if your parents ask you why you're playing with your meat and your chicken bones, just tell them Cheryl told you on TV on Learn Extra Live. Okay, don't go anywhere though. Mindset is because we've got great stuff coming ahead. After Earth, guys. So make sure you stay tuned and stay glued to your screens and watch the trailer, and make sure you come back because we've got some great stuff going on. So we'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters. Like I said, we have the After Earth competition going on. These are the prizes that we're giving away, guys. Let me just show you. So, we've got a great After Earth t-shirt. It's part of the goodie bag. So, we've got a great After Earth t-shirt that you can win. We've got the notebook. We've got the sweatband that you can wear while you're jogging, you know. Then you've got some sweat there. You can just wipe yourself and then jog again. And it's also got a pouch, guys, like a little zip thing that goes on here, so you can put in like your money and everything else. We also have this cool pen, guys. This pen, it's too awesome. When you press it, you know, when you click a pen to write, when you click this one, it goes blue. Like, who has ever seen a pen that just lights up blue? Like, who has ever, guys, in your life, who has ever seen a pen that does that? So, guys, all you need to do is go on to learnextra.co.za/afterearth. I will give you the code word later on during the show. I will also give you the winner later on during the show. But all you need to do right now is just imagine all these prizes being yours, guys. And I'll post the code word onto Facebook. I'll tell you the winner later on. But remember, guys, you can win 2 tickets as well. So you win 2 tickets and you win these great prizes that are in your goodie bag. So make sure you do that, guys. Learn extra.co.za/afterearth. I'll post the code word and I'll tell you the code word straight after a very short break. But guys, we're not going to go to a break. We're going to go straight back to Cheryl's going to tell you all about these bones. I've been learning so much. I never did life sciences at school, guys. So hearing all these words like your ribs and your hip bones and your whatevers and it's just too exciting, guys. And seeing this stuff is too exciting. So make sure you stay tuned and go to Cheryl.
Now we know why she's called Looney. All of us want the pen that lights up. It's a cool one. All right, now carrying on from our structure of the long bone, we were looking at joints. And as we said, a joint, the definition of a joint is when 2 or more bones are joined together, right, by some kind of connective tissue. Now, as I said, that we like to classify joints into different categories. And we do that according to the movement that they allow. Okay, so let us start with the first one. I'm going to bring old Stanley here. All right, you won't see it too clearly, but I'm sure you can remember. Our first joints are immovable. They cannot move. They are bound very tightly together, all right, by tough, thick, fibrous connective tissue, because when, say, for example, we're looking at the skull, you know, when the baby comes out of, all right, the uterus, and its head needs to be able to, the bones of the skull need to be able to fold in so it can come out of the birth canal. So, and only later, after it, all right, couple of months, almost to a year, and that those bones then need to start to fuse. And we need to have something that can't move, because the most important thing is that our skull is there to protect our brain. So that is called a fibrous joint. Okay, the first one, immovable. That is called a fibrous joint. It cannot move, right? And that's the sutures of the skull. Remember, when you look at the skull, it almost looks like you've taken like a sewing kit and sewed them together. We don't want them to move. We don't want our brain to move around in there. Our second joint, so now you should be able to guess. Our second joint is joints that are able to move slightly. So, although they are quite stable, right, they allow slight amount of movement when necessary, but they still are not freely movable. You will see in front of me over here, I have the vertebral column, and when we look at the vertebral column, each of the bones is separated by cartilage, cartilaginous joints, all right? Fibrous joints, immovable, cartilaginous joints. So these are our intervertebral discs. And it's these discs, all right, that allows the vertebral column to have slight movement We do need to have some kind of flexibility when it comes right to our vertebral column, but we also need to have, right, if you think of them, they're also shock absorption, all right? They're there to protect the bones. Anybody who's had a slipped disc or a herniated disc is when this intervertebral disc, part of it kind of pops out, right? But we're not going to talk about that now. So our intervertebral disc, and also if we have a look at Stanley again, you won't see it too clearly, but between the hip bones, all right? Remember that we have two hip bones and they are articulate, they join in the front by the pubic symphysis, okay? So not a lot of a movement, but you need slight movement, especially during childbirth, etc., where you need the hips to be able to have some kind of give. Which leads us then to our last joint. So we've had, all right, we've had our skull, the sutures, the immovable ones, okay, fibrous joints. We had our cartilaginous joints, where slight movement was permitted, which then brings us to what we call our synovial joints. And I'm going to do the structure of a synovial joint just now on the board with you, but I want to just show you, right, the different types of synovial joints that you can get. A synovial joint, there we go, if I move my knee, if I move the elbow joint, okay, and if I move the hip joint, what you should have noticed is they all did exactly that. They moved. So my synovial joints are joints that are able to move. Okay? They are what we call freely movable joints. And as I said just now, I'm going to look at the structure for you. Okay, if we have a look at our synovial joint, you will see because there is movement, certain structures are going to be far more evident. Now, when we look over here, you're going to see, as I said, I brought in different kinds of joints. Once again, we also classify synovial joints into what the different movement allows in that particular section as well. So we have synovial means freely movable joint, and then we've got different kinds of joints within that classification. The one that is the most freely movable is what we call the ball and socket joint. If you have a look, the hip, all right, the hip has got a socket, which is almost like a groove. And into that, all right, if we have a look over there, you'll see my epiphysis again. It's a head, it's a knob. So if I've got a groove and then I've got a socket that moves inside there, I am then able, ball, socket joint, it is then able to rotate and actually give me quite a lot of movement. A lot more if I had to move my arm around like that. All right, my shoulder joint is also ball and socket joint, gives me a large range of movement. So if my shoulder can do that, obviously my hip, not all of us are that flexible, but my hip would also be. Our next joint is our hinge. The hinge is just exactly like the door hinge. A door can do one thing. It can open or close. That's it. That's exactly what my knee and my elbow can do. If we have a look over here, okay, it can extend or it can flex. So if I were to do this, there we go, straighten my arm, bend my arm, straighten my arm. This moving around like that, that's not my elbow doing the work. That's my shoulder doing the work. All right? The same goes for my knee. Okay? My knee can bend my leg or it can straighten my leg. It can't twist it all around. If you have a look at all these little plastic things going around, we're going to look at that just now as well. Those are ligaments. And if we twist it, we can actually tear it. And those are where we get torn ligaments and sprains and those kind of things. So when we look at our joint, hinge joint, ball and socket joint, there are another two that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the head, where at the skull, at the bottom of the skull, our very first vertebral column, what do we find? The atlas and the axis. And remember when you did it last week, they fit into each other, all right? The odontoid peg fits into the atlas and it can rotate, and that helps me, all right, to roll my head, to pivot, right, to turn around in a circle. The last one is it's a bit difficult to explain because it's something that's very, very slight, and that is what we call a gliding joint. And the bones of the wrist do that. They slowly, just slightly glide past each other. So when I rotate, even though it looks like I'm rotating, the bones don't actually rotate, right? They slide next to each other. I want you to keep this in mind because I'm going to come back to the knee structure just now. Let's go and have a look at the structures of a synovial joint. Okay, there we go. Again, if we just double check the immovable joints, there's my skull, all right? There's the slightly movable, there's my pubic symphysis, there's my intervertebral discs, and then finally my synovial joint. Now there we go. You need to be able to draw one of these. Now if we have a look at the synovial joint, the one thing you must keep in mind is that the bone now can move, all right? So when the bone moves, we need to be able to make sure that it can move smoothly, right? So when we look at the structure of a synovial joint, keep in mind, nice, smooth, fluid. You don't want to have any kind of irritations. So let's have a look at the synovial. First thing, the most obvious part, all right, is that we've got two bones, because that's what a joint is. Here's a bone and here's a bone. Okay? Now, as you can see, the most prominent thing that you should notice over here is this blue outline. And that is what we call a synovial capsule or a joint capsule. There's like a lining, all right, around the joint, and inside that joint, this is all liquid. All right, this is all liquid. That is called synovial fluid. All right, there we go. If you have a look, the synovial cavity, I think I've put it somewhere over here. There we go, the synovial fluid. Now that's water. And what is the function of water in the joint? It's going to be lubrication. So when the joint, all right, play with your chicken bone again, as Luby said. When the two joints move across each other, right, that slight liquid that's there, all right, is going to cause that there is no friction. Okay, so you want nice smooth movements. Remember, these joints can move. So the easier and smoother they can move, the much better for you. You will see over here, usually we have a tendon or a ligament, okay, surrounding the capsule. So here in the black, I'm going to quickly change the color. You saw it on the long bones, all right? What do we find at the ends of the long bones? Yes, the articulating cartilage, which is usually hyaline cartilage. Okay, hyaline cartilage. It's nice and smooth. So not only do we have the synovial fluid that acts as a lubricating, we also have this hyaline cartilage, which is nice and smooth, that allows the movement to occur nice and friction-free. Right? But you'll see some people, what happens is if that starts to chip off, the cartilage starts to chip off and goes into the synovial fluid. The synovial fluid actually starts to swell. And very often you'll see people that say they've got water on the knee. Sometimes it's a very common sports injury. And what it is synovial, all the little bits of bone can be in there, and now the body's trying to make more fluid, so to speak, so that the joint can move much easier. But what it does is it actually causes the stiffness, this whole lot of water that surrounds the knee, right? And then you need to go to the doctor and they need to get an injection and they suck all the fluid out, right? Not very pleasant. So there we look at our structure of our right synovial joint. Let me quickly go over again with you so you can see. Ball and socket joint, head, all right, socket, like a groove, ball, the head of usually my long bone, fitting into it, and then freely being able to move. The second one, my hinge joint, there's my elbow, all right, flexing and extending, or my knee, all right, saying flex and extend. If I move my knee out like that, I'm not using my knee joints, I'm using my hip joints. Okay, then the ones that, the pivot, that diagram, remember the atlas and the axis, the C1 and the C2. The atlas has a nice big, all right, round vertebral, all right, hollow for the vertebral column, and it has a nice big place for the odontoid peg. Remember our second one, the axis, had this like little knob at the top. It fits into it, right, and then it can pivot. Pivot is to, all right, to turn around on its axis. Sorry. Then the last one, if you have a look over here, if you have a look at the gliding joints of the carpals and of the tarsal, so of our wrists and of our ankles, when we move them, they have that slight gliding motion, all right, that is going to go over them. Okay, carrying on. Okay, if we have a look at our long bone, and I'm going to just quickly go back to the desk. I want to just show you something. When we looked, I want to use the knee joint. When we looked at it, if you have a look at this joint, you should come aware that it's not only the bones, that there are lots of other tissue, all right, that make up a joint. And it's all the tissue that you did when you did mammalian tissue. So here we have two bones, all right? Here we have the epiphysis, that will be spongy bone. Here the diaphysis will be compact bone. But if we look at our knee joints, we see this transparency structure over here. That is a tendon. Because what's going to happen, the muscle of the thigh, all right, is going to end over here, and what we find is that it moves. You can't have muscle moving over the joint because that will actually make the movement not as fluid. So we have tendons, right, going over. What else do we have? We have our articulating cartilage. Our hyaline cartilage prevents friction, helps the joint work much easier. And then we've got these stabilizing structures, our ligaments, that help stabilize our joint. So when we look at our bones, we're not only actually looking at the bone itself, but when we look at the joints, there are so many other tissues that also make up, all right, the composition of our joints. Are we ready for a break yet?
All right.
Because I can feel my throat is getting so dry here.
Okay, you can take a short break. Mindset is, like I said, your code word for today is region. So grade 10s, make sure you go on to learnextra.co.za/after earth and enter in your code word region. That is the grade 10 code word for today. I will post it on Facebook and tell you a little more about it straight after the break. So don't go anywhere, guys. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that very short break. I want to tell you something about Career Indaba. Make sure you go to careerindaba.co.za to register yourselves and your friends grade 10 to 12. It's all about how you guys can get more information on the career path you want to take. So if you're confused and you want to get more information, make sure you go to the Science and Convention Center from the 20th till the 22nd of June. We will be there, guys, chatting to you, talking to you. You guys can ask us any questions that you may have. I will be there, Abram will be there, Indy, and all your favorite Mindset Learn presenters will be there. So make sure you hop on over to careerindaba.co.za to get more information about how to register. Remember, guys, it is for free, so encourage all your friends, grade 10 to 12, encourage all your friends to register for free and go to the Santon Convention Center from the 20th till the 22nd of June. I will post all the information on Facebook. Thank you so much for posting, guys, and just talking to us and telling us how much you enjoy the show. I'll ask Cheryl some questions throughout the show, like later on, but right now let's take it back to Cheryl and continue with the lesson.
Thank you, Leni. Okay, carrying on with what we were just busy with, we have covered the part where we said we looked at the different joints, we looked at the structure of the long bone, but remember, bones overcome resistance. I'm sure all of you in technology, you learned about levers, okay, and in our body, our bones are our levers of the body. They enable us to overcome these heavy loads, right? And our load is actually our skeleton because it doesn't move. So what needs to move the skeleton is going to be our muscles. Now, if once again you go back to mammalian tissue, you see when all these little things come back to you, we don't all learn these little boxes. Okay, so you need to go back to mammalian tissue and revise. What did we do? We looked at skeletal muscle, we looked at smooth muscle, and we looked at cardiac muscle. So when it comes to the skeleton, we are going to look at striated or skeletal muscle. Now, on the board over here, I have, all right, a picture of a muscle for you. You need to be able to label the muscle as a whole and to have a look at its active structure, which is the myofibril. If we have a look at our muscle, remember I said to you just now, it's when it comes to the skeleton and the joint, it's just not the bones. Here is our bone. It only plays a small part in bringing about the movement. The movement is going to come from our muscles, and obviously specifically our striated muscle. Those are the muscles in our body that are voluntary. Right, if I decide, that's me deciding to do this with my arms or doing whatever. It's not an involuntary response. I'm not sitting here going, okay, digest, breathe. Right, those are involuntary. Voluntary, right, I can make a conscious decision to move it. Now, if you remember, one of the things when we looked at, some people like to use the word skeletal, some people like to use the word striated, it doesn't matter. Striated means stripes. And that is because the skeletal muscle has got a very specific pattern, right? A light stripe and a dark stripe, light stripe and a dark stripe. It's almost like a zebra, okay? The zebra of muscles. And that has a huge, big influence on how my muscle is going to be able to work. Let's just have a look quickly at the structure of my muscle. It looks very complicated, but in actual fact, it's not really. It's little groups. If you take pencils, a whole lot of pencils, and you put them together, all right, you've got a group. That's exactly how muscle is made. So if you take a whole lot of pencils and you put them together with elastic band, you take another lot of pencils, you put them together with elastic band, take another group of pencils and you put them together with elastic band, you've got all these groups, and then you group them all together. That is exactly what the muscle is. So if we have a look over here, I'm going to start from that is the big one. Okay, so if we have a look, the smallest, here's my pencil. The smallest functioning part of my muscle is my muscle fiber or my myofibril. There we go. It's a cell. Remember when we did mammalian tissue? That is one single cell. I put all of these cells together. There we go. Each of those, a cell. And what do I want to do? I want to wrap it up nice and neatly. Okay, and what do I wrap things up with? I wrap things up with connective tissue. Okay, and that connective tissue is going to be my perimysium. Okay, so there we go. Nice little fibers. There's another one, a little wrapped up. There's a nice little bundle. There's each little cell. There's a bundle. There's a bundle. There's a bundle. Okay, each one of these bundles is called a fascicle. So it's almost like a herd of cattle, all right? So it means a lot of cattle together. A fascicle means a whole lot of muscle, a muscle fiber, a muscle cell, all right, together makes one particular fascicle. It's like bone. Remember, one concentric thing of bone was called a Haversian canal. One group of muscle fibers is called a fascicle. So it's like grouping it together. Now, if we have a look at the next diagram, so I've gone from big to small. You will see again, let me use the words, perimysium, connective tissue around the bundle, endomysium, connective tissue in between each of the muscle fibers, epimysium, the whole muscle fiber joined together. All right, so endo inside, peri almost on the outside, epi, the large one on the outside. So it's again like bone. We like to keep, your body needs to keep things in place, and it does that by fibrous tissue. Now if we have a look over here, all right, at my myofibril, it is one cell. Remember, one specific cell. And what did we notice here? As I said, why is it called striated muscle? Because we see the different kinds of bands. There's a light stripe and a dark stripe. Now, where does that come to? Now, let's go and take that and let's go and look even closer at what a muscle cell looks like. And this is the diagram that you should be familiar with. It's the myofibril, but we're actually looking at it at a much, much, much smaller level. Now, I want to show you what you need to be able to learn. If you can see these pink ones, all right, over there, can you see the pink lines? Okay, there. I'm actually tracing over the blue. That is what we call myosin. Okay, it is a protein. Muscles are made up of protein, and those are called myosin filaments. They are thicker. I'm going to use a different color now. I'm going to use green. Do you notice these ones in between? They're much thinner. They don't stand out as much. Okay, and that is the protein actin. All right, actin. And they occur, I'm going to use my fingers as an example, they occur interweaving. All right, they occur like that. So one, all right, and they are then going to move across each other. Now, that's how we get the bands. Now, what will happen is you have got this, what we call a sarcomere. No, me and this border tonight are going to fight. Where that line, can you see that? All right, here's my actin, my myosin. I've got what I call a disc, all right, the Z disc. That's a line showing one sarcomere. And what a sarcomere is the following. It's a piece of the muscle here, and what happens when a muscle moves? It contracts. Okay, so there we've got movement, contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation. And if you were to look at it very carefully, you would see that the myosin actually have got almost like a boat has got oars. It's got little oars, little sticky out parts over there. So when the actin comes to it, all right, remember again, we're going to move two. It needs to pull it together, all right? So it's going to pull, and it's going to pull, and it's going to pull. So what it's going to do as it moves across here, this one picks it up and it pulls it. So it goes closer, picks it up and pulls, picks it up and pulls, picks it up and pulls. So what does our muscle do? It gets shorter. It contracts. That is called the sliding filament theory. And you need to be able to have a lot of energy for that. And that's why there's lots and lots of mitochondria in the muscle cells. Okay, as you'll see, there's a lot of writing up. You will see in the notes, all of these are in your notes. Now, right, I'm sure some of you, okay, have had a few of these things before. We can injure our skeletal system. We can sprain it. Those of you who've sprained your ankle, if you've stepped wrong, swelling, you can strain it. It's not as bad as a sprain, all right? It's a little bit sore, but it's a little bit tightness in the joints, but you can still work. Oh, cramps, okay. So maybe because of our diet, we don't have enough calcium, all right? Or we don't have enough salt, sodium, or we don't have proper magnesium, or our bananas, etc. And the muscles, the nerve cell to the muscle doesn't work properly, and we have a little bit of cramping. Okay, dislocations. Those of you, especially rugby players, all right, what happens is the whole joint comes out of place. The two bones that meet, all right, they come out of place with each other. And those of you, a fracture, all right, is where we have broken. Have a look over there. I've got put 2 x-rays in. Look at this dislocation. This, the head of the humerus, way out of the socket where it's supposed to be in. Okay, and this looks very sore. You can have a look over here. There's the bone, and it's broken. So it's a fracture. Okay, diseases, if you have a look, at the diseases. I know my time is almost up, so I'm going to just quickly show you. Rickets, right? Especially in children, when they don't have, their body can't absorb calcium, so they're shorted of vitamin D. Our next one, right, osteoporosis, is especially in ladies when menopause hits, the body needs calcium, and takes it out, and all of a sudden, what do we see? Our bones become soft, and I have to stop.
Right, setters, it's been an awesome show, guys. I hope you guys are just as excited as I am. But After Earth and Korea and Daba, I'd just like to congratulate Marilee Muller. You have won yourself 2 tickets to go see After Earth, as well as all these prizes in the goodie bag. So congratulations to you. And Mindsetters, we will see you next time. But for now, it's a goodbye for us. Everything of the best for your exams. We'll see you guys. Bye.